Good morning, everybody. The sheriff and I want to thank everyone for coming out this morning as we roll out a new piece of legislation that I recently introduced in Trenton, A5242, the Responsible School Violence Prevention, Preparation, and Protection, RSVP3, pilot program. This new bill is the result of a collaborative efforts of both the sheriff's office and my office in our continuing efforts to combat school violence. Let me tell you how this new RSVP3 program works. It establishes in the Department of Law and Public Safety, under the direction of the Attorney General, a 3-year pilot program that will train law enforcement, mental health professionals, teachers, staff, and students to identify and report behaviors that signal potential threats to school safety. The program will be established in Morris County and the surrounding regions and paid for out of the state's budget. This program builds on what law enforcement has learned from studying 28 incidents of mass attacks to develop a threat matrix to identify those behaviors and traits that individuals exhibit prior to an incident. I will let the law enforcement personnel, my partners in this legislation, fully explain exactly how this matrix will be developed and how it will work. You are all familiar with the Class 3 law enforcement officers legislation that my father and I sponsored, and that is now law. There is no better example than what happened Friday at VOTEC on the benefits of that program. Once that threat was received, the resource officer at VOTEC immediately took control of the scene, locked down the school, diverted the incoming students and buses, and directed the emergency response to that facility. This bill, this RSVP3 bill, is the next logical step in that process. The Class 3 law enforcement officer is designed to protect the students as the incident occurs. This RSVP3 program will hopefully be able us to prevent an incident from actually occurring. And that's what this is all about. So it is now my honor to introduce the prosecutor from Morris County, Prosecutor Knapp. Prosecutor?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks very much. Thanks, everybody, for coming out today in this horrible weather. But it's very, very important that the public be informed of the efforts here, really pioneered by Sheriff Gannon here in Morris County, along with our County Chiefs Association, to develop programs that are proactive as opposed to reactive. The planning and efforts that have gone into this have taken many, many months. I know that Under Sheriff Spitzer and the sheriff have worked very, very intensely with our chiefs to develop a holistic approach to the issue of school violence. And the goal here is obviously to avoid school violence before it occurs. In our office, we have many reports that come in. We screen them very carefully. Everyone is vetted by our Homeland Security Unit to determine whether or not the threat is something that needs to be addressed immediately, and we take them extremely seriously, as do our chiefs. So I wanted to let you know and the public know that Morris County really is on taking the lead here, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak with the sheriff and all with the chiefs today as well on this new effort. So thank you, everybody, for coming today. I guess I turn it over to the sheriff.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Prosecutor. Good morning. I'm Sheriff Jim Gannon. I'm the sheriff of Morris County. As I look out in the audience here and people behind me, I see why Morris County is unique. I say that Morris County does it better, and they truly do. This effort right here is a multidisciplinary approach to incidents of school violence. I have to give a big shout out to the chiefs of police from Morris County. I have to give a shout out to the freeholders, who you'll learn had funded some of this program in the beginning. UWASI, the Urban Area Security Initiative, who funded this program in its infancy. But the county prosecutors here, and who better than Assemblyman Bucco, who really this is near and dear to his heart. He has people that work in schools in his own family. And we all know that our most vulnerable populations are in our schools, right? There are children, there are grandchildren, right? They're students, they're paraprofessionals, they're professionals, they're people that keep the lights on in schools. And I think they're all near and dear to our hearts. But in February of 2018, after the mass shootings at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, we had a meeting with the chiefs of police of Morris County, the executive board, and we discussed how prepared we were for incidents of school violence. And we all agreed that we had great relationships with our superintendents and principals. We agreed that we had equipment. We agreed that we had even blueprints and long guns and things like that to neutralize threats. However, we recognized the fact that we really don't want to be in the tactical world unless we have to. We recognized that we want to be left of bang on the timeline. We want to identify behavior prior to it reaching a tactical level. So that's what we did. We contracted with Sigma, which is an organization, a private entity that has people in it like Drs. Melissa Reeves, former president of the National School Psychologists Association, Marisa Randazzo, formerly of the United States Secret Service, head of threat assessment, the gold standard. We reached out for Sigma and those doctors, and we asked them to assemble curriculum so that we could head this off. And I think it's really worked, right? They've assembled a behavioral threat assessment and management guide that we've used that develops somewhat of a matrix, right, that we can put information into and make assessments of whether this behavior is concerning, and if it is, what our next course of action is. The model that you'll see here and the curriculum that we've rolled out already was $150,000. And I presented this concept to the Board of Chosen Freeholders in Morris County. And we had great discussion on it. And they all voted unanimously for this program. Again, the Urban Area Security Initiative. Scott DiGirolamo is here. We approached Scott on it, and Scott says, we need this. So collectively, we were able to train law enforcement, mental health professionals, and educators in Morris County on this program. This program mimics a new release from the Secret Service. It's no shock to us because we had the lady develop this program from the Secret Service. No shock to us. So what's just rolling out right now across America is something that we've been involved in. For some time now. So now we're just looking to roll it out even further. We know that actors in school violence the incidents are rarely sudden, impulsive events. There's many times weeks of planning. There's signs that are identified from these actors that will explain what they're going to do way in advance. We know that 80% or so will have some type of leakage. They'll tell someone. We know that 90% of them will have suicidal ideations. These are things that we know. So we're in a better position to get together with all the disciplines and make some calls as to how to deal with this student as we go forward. So a lot of good things going on right here in Morris County with regards to this issue, okay? Again, there are there are people in these schools, okay? And I would suggest, and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, I would suggest that this model that's being put together here will also extend to, public buildings. It'll also extend to houses of worship. It'll extend beyond schools. We're starting with schools, but you're going to see this go down the lane as we go forward. Okay, our next person up, why don't we have Ciro Tremento? Chief Tremento is the president of the Morris County Police Chiefs Association.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to thank Assemblyman Bucco and Sheriff Gannon for bringing this RSVP tool to the forefront of the law enforcement community. The legislation will undoubtedly be the model of the nation when it comes to further protecting our children within the numerous school environments throughout our communities. I'd like to explain why pilot RSVP program makes sense in today's world and can only enhance school security. With the fast-paced advancements in technology, evolving by the hour, both law enforcement and school officials must work in real time to keep up with potential threats arising within our respective jurisdictions. We as caretakers of society must make these potential threats a priority, and the RSVP program will allow us to do that by allowing real-time communications to be relayed in a timely fashion to the right people. It will become mission critical to allow for the importance of funding for this type of endeavor. As with any other true security measure, funding must be provided to ensure the maximum protection to our most valuable assets. This legislation will assist us in further strengthening our school populations. I currently hold a meeting with the prosecutor, sheriff, and executive board of the Morris County Chiefs of Police for the purpose of unifying our efforts towards many public safety issues occurring in our respective jurisdictions. The information compiled from the RSVP program will be frequently discussed and disseminated throughout the team as logistics are modified. This legislation will be a living piece of legislation that may require adaptation as variables change. As president of the Morris County Chiefs Association, I presently host an additional monthly meeting with all of our other Morris County chiefs in order to receive proper feedback and circulate important informational updates. Once again, the RSVP information will be discussed amongst the chiefs with regularity. The Morris County law enforcement team has an approach to everything we do, and it is truly effective. When the worst case scenario plays out within Morris County, the best kicks in from its local police departments. The officers throughout the county are the best trained in the state, and the RSVP program will certainly elevate our law enforcement professionals to an even higher standard. As the sheriff always says, we do things better in Morris County. Once again, I'd like to thank Assemblyman Bucco, Sheriff Gannon, for this opportunity to allow the Morris County Chiefs of Police to participate in this worthwhile venture. I look forward to continue working with both Assemblyman Bucco and Sheriff Gannon in the weeks to come. Take care and stay safe, ladies and gentlemen.
Scott DiGirolamo will be our next speaker, representing UWASI.
Good morning. I'm Scott DiGirolamo. I'm the Director of Law and Public Safety in the county for Morris, but I also have the advantage of being on the executive board of the Urban Area Security Initiative, which is a grant program that the federal government does for high-risk urban areas. New Jersey is one of those higher-risk areas, and it's Morris County with 6 other counties in Newark and Jersey City. We try and focus on all hazards, but primarily terrorism or violent acts and how we respond to it and what the capability is. And one of the areas that we've been looking at for a number of years is targeted violence, whether it's violent extremism or school violence. And a lot of the dollars that we put in the models that we had was being able to respond to those incidents, preparing the police officers, preparing the tactical teams, preparing the fire and EMS to go into those areas to rescue people and save them from bleeding, training teachers in bleeding control, a lot of the areas that focus on what we do after the fact happens. the part that was missing from our model is how do we prevent it? And RSVP3 really fills that gap. And working with the people you heard here today and our state partners at Homeland Security and Disaster Mental Health and State Police, a lot has been put together to how we step up and train people to manage the threats. And that becomes a critical, paramount importance of truly managing what that threat is, both in preventing it, because if we prevent that incident, we never have to implement all these other things that we've trained with. But I think important to that as well is managing it effectively for something that's not a threat. I think we've all seen the articles of the kindergarten student that draws a picture of a gun and gets expelled from school. Well, those things of being labeled for something that really wasn't a threat can have an impact on that student for the rest of his career. So teaching the teachers and the mental health professionals, the police officers, to really analyze that threat works on both ways. So for us, the RSVP model focuses on prevention by training the teams, multidiscipline teams, to assess those threats, because we really feel that the targeted violence incident with the best outcome is one that really never happened, and RSVP3 gives us that opportunity to prevent it. The model gives our partners the tools to work with to collaboratively prevent a tragic incident. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Steve Forte. I'm the superintendent of the Denville School District. I have the pleasure of speaking to you today a little bit about my side of this. I think the biggest thing for me right now is to say that the fact that everybody's involved in this and everybody's taking it seriously and we've moved past it can't happen here, I think is a great step. I think our county is on the forefront. Chief Wagner and I, the former chief of Denville Police, have been speaking around the state on the topic of school security. But I think it's really important for us to also to realize that school security, when it's reactive, it's important. And we do have a lot of things in place to react to incidents. But the proactive side is super important. And we have in place in our county and in our town, we have one of the best mental health facilities in our area right here in St. Clair's. And in our district, we've partnered with them to provide mental health services and threat assessments and threat assessment training for our staff. I can't say enough about how important that part of it is. And I'm really happy to see the fact that everybody really feels like this is important, that it's a number one priority. I don't think anybody doesn't feel like protecting kids and staff is a number one priority in any town. And I know in Denville, it's definitely number one. We can't teach kids and have kids learn when they're upset and scared. And the tragedy in Parkland, to me, I actually was able to witness the fact that our students were upset. You know, Columbine happened a while ago. Even the Sandy Hook thing happened a while ago. But when Parkland happened, and the kids started doing things like having walkouts and talking about how they feel safe, how they don't feel safe, it really hit me hard. We have to do whatever we can to make sure that they feel safe in their schools. And I think the proactive side and the reactive side are both important. But just getting everyone in the room here and having this new legislation and the training that's going to be available to everyone, it's super important. And I appreciate everybody coming here today and being invited to speak. And thank you, and let's stay safe out there.
Good morning. I'm Lori Becker, the Department of Human Services Mental Health Administrator, and I do also want to thank Assemblyman Bucco and Sheriff Gannon, our county leadership, for supporting this important new initiative. It will allow mental health professionals to be a part of the threat assessment response process and management process, intervening hopefully before a crisis occurs. Averting potential tragedy is what it's all about and saves lives, including the life of the potential offenders. I was here at the training last fall along with many of my mental health partners. I know they're on board to be a part of this on day one, including St. Clair's, our Traumatic Loss Coalition, our disaster response crisis counselor team. We already have a really strong foundation in place to extend and expand and be a part of this important work to help our communities help our communities continue to be safe and well. So getting ready to go. I'm very excited about this. I have grandchildren in the schools. I have a daughter who's a teacher. I'm very concerned personally about this, and I'm just so grateful that we're going to be rolling this out here locally. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Christopher Wagner. I'm the recently retired Chief of Police from the Denville Police Department here in Morris County, and I'm a past president of the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police. I want to talk about two things today. First, the partnership aspect of the RSVP program. There's no secret that much of what we do in law enforcement can't be done alone. And shortly after 9/11, we talked in law enforcement about how we couldn't work in silos anymore. And school security and school threat assessment is no different than that. The information shared about school threats is shared amongst students. It's shared amongst teachers, staff members, school custodians, bus drivers, police officers, sheriff's officers, members of the prosecutor's office, and it's important that we work together cooperatively to share that information so that we can act effectively on it. One of my most proudest accomplishments as the chief of police in Denville was having and maintaining the cooperative relationship that I had with Steve Forte at our K-8 school district and the other 4 superintendents of schools of the other school districts within Denville. We spoke openly and cooperatively about everything, including matters relating to school violence. And when there was a threat or the thought of a threat, we immediately met and spoke together, and we tried to mitigate that. With the implementation of this RSVP program and the legislation introduced by Assemblyman Bucco, everyone in the state of New Jersey, including everyone in Morris County, will have the ability to do that scientifically, to not do what we just spoke about, taking a first grader or a second grader who just is having a bad day and says, he blurts out or she blurts out, I'm going to kill you. Ultimately, we're concerned about the mental health and welfare of a child, and what's in our best interest is to get that child healthy and back to school and to be productive again. And this program is going to help that. I can't state enough the sheriff's comment about being left of bang. We have spent tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars on training and equipment in the horrible chance that we might have to respond to one of these events. And it's my hope that we can attend some training and train some people for much less money and never, ever touch those tens of thousands of dollars of equipment and never have to use bleeding control and never have to reunify kids. So this is really cutting-edge training that everyone should have, not just across Morris County, not just across the state of New Jersey, but all across the United States to help prevent one of these tragedies from ever happening again. And this is truly maybe one of the first few steps in finally finding a way to stop the news coverage of the next school shooting. This might actually be the piece of legislation and the piece of training that stops that. And finally, I want to recognize Assemblyman Bucco for his cooperative efforts and all of his hard work in matters like this relating to law enforcement. The Assemblyman mentioned the Class 3 legislation. When I was the chief in Denville and was about to become the president of the State Chiefs Association, we met with Assemblyman Bucco and his father, Senator Bucco, and we discussed the need to do something after Sandy Hook to get more police officers in schools. And we floated the idea of the Class 3 legislation by the Assemblyman, and he immediately replied with a supportive yes. And within a couple of years, with the cooperation of a number of different law enforcement agencies and the legislation in New Jersey, we passed what I think is a huge piece of legislation to help secure our schools, to get fully trained, armed, well-educated, very seasoned, smart police officers in our schools for much less than it costs to put a full-time police officer in there. And I just want to recognize the Assemblyman for the untiring work that he continues to do every day to support law enforcement and to support everybody in the state of New Jersey to help keep everybody safe. Thank you.
Thank you all. I figure at this time we take some questions. If the members of the media have any questions, or anybody else for that matter. Mr. Westhoven.
I have two. Thank you. I notice in that description up there, it mentions a guide for schools, colleges, and universities. I'm not necessarily looking for the details of each, but I'm wondering if this program is specific enough that it addresses the specific needs of those different entities, because they are different entities. I mean, a K-5 school with 100 kids, a high school with 1,000 kids, or a 4-year college with 2,000 kids in multiple buildings are all different scenarios.
They are many times on the tactical side, right? And we do that work. I mean, there's many public schools, private schools. You know, we have 2-year colleges here. We have 4-year universities here. I would suggest to you on the tactical end, yes. On the behavior, no. Okay. The behavior. The one thing that when we had the training here, right in this room, and we trained people how to be assessors, you know, the one thing they taught us, because I sat through the curriculum myself, the one thing they taught us is after these 2 days, you can make the decisions. You know, they've broken it down to 11 categories of concern. So regardless of the age of the person, you could still do a proper assessment before you pitch it to other professionals. So I would suggest that tactically can be different, layouts can be different, but from a behavior perspective, I think it's all the same.
But the different scenarios are addressed in the program.
They are.
Related to that, how much of this program and training is there a crossover relevance to non-schools, workplace, the mall, public events?
I think as I said, I think it fits right in there. Yeah. You know, we're welcoming, right? We're welcoming. Schools are welcoming. Places of worship are welcoming. You know, we spend a lot of time, you know, the prosecutor and myself and all our staff spend a lot of time in houses of worship. There's roughly 317 in Morris County, right? We spend a lot of time in those populations, and there's a lot of open doors, okay? We train people when we go there to just be observant. You know, regardless of the holiday you're celebrating, have someone that has their eyes on the door, you know, at all times. I mean, we're just in a changing world, and this will roll out as we go down the lane a little bit, because behavior is behavior, you know, and the predictor of future events is best done by historical events. You know, what has happened in the past? Let's train these people up. What was the behavior that was being exhibited by these people in the past? And many times there's leakage. Most all the times there's some form of leakage. That's what we want to do. Are you going to potentially have a one-off? There is always concern for that. But we're moving in the right direction with this.
Yeah, and I think the more people that ultimately get trained here, the more eyes you have on the street. So whether or not they're picking something up for a school, or they happen to be in a gathering where they pick something up that may be directed at another facility, they're going to recognize that as a result of this training. So the more eyes that we have on the street that are trained to pick up these things, the better it is.
Any other questions? Well, I appreciate you all being here today. I think this is a real historical day here in Morris County. Again, I thank you. Thank you for your partnership all the time. Assemblyman Bucco, it's just great when we can make a call and he says, what are you doing for lunch? We could go have a cup of coffee and we could talk about the issues that are of concern to the people. It's a wonderful thing we have going on here. And I'm very appreciative for what you do day in and day out with regards to this issue. And keep an eye on this. I think this is going to go somewhere. I really do. We got a lot of momentum behind us with regards to this. A lot of good things are happening, and it affects each and every one of us. So thank you all very much.
And just don't keep an eye on it. We got to get together and work towards getting other legislators to see the same thing that I've seen, so that we can get this thing off the ground and onto the floor and voted on and onto the governor's desk. So this is going to take an effort, just like we did and just as the chief spoke about with the Class 3 law enforcement officers. We're going to need your help, and I'm going to need your help. You never do this alone. This is part of a team. So anything that you can do to help, I'm happy to be there to give you whatever I can to help you help me. So thank you.
Let us know we're going to Trenton.
Amen.
All right, let's do it. Thank you.